I'll call the meeting to order. This is a Finance Committee meeting. It's today's 6:22. It's 6:02 right now. We are also doing a hybrid meeting today. And so this meeting is in person. So if we do have technical difficulties, this is hybrid for convenience only. So if we have technical difficulties, we will continue the meeting. So here tonight, we have Peter Matusko, Pam Hegg, Amy Biden, and Paul McCrudsky. Tonight, can we start with the first agenda item, which is approving the minutes that we had left over from prior to the town meeting. So it is Finance Committee on 4/14. We had a joint with the Select Board on 4/15. We had Finance Committee on 4/21. We had a joint with Select Board on 4/22, a joint with Select Board on 4/28, and a joint with Select Board on 4/29. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve minutes as a group.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Paul and a second by Peter. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. All right, so next we're gonna just start with Nate. He is our new town administrator, and he's given me a lot of he helped build this agenda. So we're gonna talk about what we want to do going forward. On the agenda, we are going to be talking about trainings, resources. We're going to want to talk about what we want to see going forward, or what we want on our meetings. I did put the override in here so that we could discuss it. Linda has some numbers for us. And so where exactly, remind everybody where those numbers are going, that were approved. And, with the discussion, we'll end up talking about fiscal year 28 in the overall municipal budget. All right. So Nate, if you have anything you want to start with.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thanks, Nate. I'm a Malloy Town Administrator. Yeah, I guess I can go over a few things. As I'm getting my goal set for this coming year, and one of them will be the financial aspect of the town. And so, there's HR, communications, products and initiatives, but I think the financial piece is really important. And so, again, some of it would be, keeping the community updated, you updated as Finance Committee and then the Select Board. And so, that has been happening, but to be really transparent and clear about, how does the budget work? Where are we with, expenditures and everything? And then what's the strength of the town and how can we maintain it? So, there was the override. A lot of communities in Western Mass are facing it. There was just an article about it, and ideas are trying to change maybe the state law about around Prop 2.5. But for now, it's really, how can Hadley maintain its small rural town, its character and everything, and still be fiscally sustainable and resilient? And I think that's a really big challenge, given all the needs and demands of the community and what people like about it. So, I met with different townsfolk, different stakeholders, and everyone likes Hadley, right? They have, they might not like certain things, but they like the open space. They like, small development. They like, the big box stores actually provide some resources and things. But it's like, how do you balance that? How do you keep Hadley moving? How do you balance expenses and revenues if, expenses are increasing more than your new growth? And so some of it would be, working with you on what are the ideas for the next few years in terms of new growth and revenues. The town really needs some ideas, some new growth. I think the budget's pretty lean. There can be some cost savings, and Linda and I, we talk and we'll look into it. But Hadley's budget isn't that big. It shocked me when Granby passed their budget recently, and it was almost $2 million more than Hadley's. And so I'm not sure how it got there, but it's like, wow, it's it's just like, okay, how do we manage Hadley's budget, given, I feel like there's kind of two towns, right? There's a Route 9 and what the fire department, police have in terms of their responses and responsibilities. And so if you're looking at comparable towns to Hadley, I feel like there's a few different kinds. There's some that manage the economic and commercial piece. There's a lot of car trips and a lot of businesses, but then there's the budget and population size. That's a different comparable community, say in terms of finances or other pieces, if you're comparing different communities. And so, Hadley straddles that line of having a lot of services, a lot of things and happening, and it's also still a small town. And so I think a really big piece is how do you strengthen the financial aspect in my mind of the community? So working with you and everyone, what are some good growth tools and things? I think, the override is helpful, but it's not going to sustain the budget long term. So that's why FY 28 is on there. So the override helped, but it really, given projections and where, what it really did was, give us a year or two, but it really is now planning for the future of how do we keep the budget from, being balanced and growing. I think that's a really important piece. And so some of it would also be, what kind of trainings do we offer? What do we need the public to understand? And so I'd like to talk about the override as the next item. The finance committee voted for some of it and not all of it. And I think it'd be really important to understand why and what you're hearing from the community. And so, are there things that could be shared or learned, better? What are things that need to be answered? Are there questions? So I think all that is really important because new growth can be slow. So, there's different ways to get new money. So, there's immediate things that might need to happen for the next fiscal year to balance the budget. And then there's longer term things like zoning or land use regulations, working with our state legislators and representatives to try to get things changed at the state level. And maybe that'll happen next year or the year after, but in the immediate future for a year or two, what can we do to make sure that the budget is balanced? And so like the state-owned program for the pilot for state-owned land, Western Mass gets a really low share portionally of the formula funding. If that were changed, it'd be hugely helpful. And there's some traction there, but that, may not happen. And if it does, it could be 2 years out.
Mhm.
They just got some more money for rural schools for Chapter 90 for snow and ice. I think it's less than 200,000 for Hadley, but we'll take whatever we can get. School funding is a big one. Those are things that, the schools and the towns can have that conversation with the state, but it may not be immediate. And so really it's like, what can we impact given the budget, our constraints as a community, and make sure things can move forward smoothly. And, local receipts are really volatile, right? So we've seen with the building department being understaffed, and if assessments aren't keeping up, which they actually are doing a really good job, we get less local receipts in, and that can be a few $100,000. And so, that adds up. And so, how do you manage all of that and keep the budget moving? I mean, it's a pretty big budget for the community it has, right? I mean, it's not as big as Granby, but there's, it's 22 million, right? And so every little bit adds up, but it's big picture, how do you keep $22 million growing at 2.5% or 3% every year to maintain local services? Most government is personnel costs, right? So it's people. A lot of the budget is people. Health insurance costs are high. There's retirement benefits, which, people become public service employees because of, retirement benefits. I don't want that going away. I've been in the game a long time. I'm hoping that when I retire in 20 years, after 40 or 50 years in municipal service, I get a good retirement package. I'm not going to lie. But there are costs there. And, so it is people. But there's good things like this building, the library. So how do you maintain services, capital projects, and facilities with the budget? And, I've been meeting with different staff, getting ideas. But I think that's a really important part of what I'd like to do in the next year is come up with, different policies, ideas, procedures, and, have a good relationship there with you and with the community on how we can move that forward. And, there may be roadblocks, right? I'm okay if there's ideas that don't come to fruition, but at least we have ideas and we can have discussions about it because then we can say, we tried it, right? And maybe we circle back in a year or two about it. But, it's, to me, it's really important to have those discussions and just see where we go.
Okay. Start with you. We talked about the override. One of the things I would like to hope maybe next meeting put on the agenda, I'd like to invite Sue. I did talk to her, Sue Glowatsky, and I said, I wanted to know, because if people ask me exactly that override coming in, when will people see it in their tax bill? How is that going to happen? And she told me about the calculation and how it starts in February, but it takes part of last year's. So I'd like her to present to us so that we could, then the people can see it exactly what to expect when it comes to that increase, when they will see it. And what, and because it's not even, that they aren't even quarters. Right. So, the other thing is, she also, mentioned, because I ask a lot of questions to her about the assessments, how we are assessing our, commercial property, because it's assessed much different than residential. So she has she was putting together some, FAQs at one point, so I think that would be great at that point too, to really understand that. Meanwhile, one of the things that Peter was doing on his own, which was great, which I'll have him talk to more, is he actually went out and talked to people that were having issues. So he has some items that he will probably, people are showing concern about.
Mhm.
So a lot of the people that voted maybe no on this, and that you saw the signs, he might have some of their concerns that we can say, okay, and address. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah.
Yep. What, did
Ready?
you-
Okay. Excuse me. Like one of the questions is with the override that's passed, we see, which Linda had given out, we see the 1.5. If it's not going to be till February of when the override passes through with these salaries, or if it's pay raises or whatever it is, or employees, how are we paying for those people? And are we not going to be hiring those people until the override is effective? That's a question, knowing it's like, okay, it passed, but did we hire them? And then how are we going to pay them if it doesn't go through till February? How does that actually work?
So Sue, I think that will end up getting cleared up when, because that was a great question. And Sue tried to explain it to me, how it's there, but in how they recalculate it in the bills. And I think that she will answer that question. She says it's there and she will let us know. But it's a very hard calculation, I think, to try to figure out part of last year.
But I think, but like generally speaking, so, the town has a, budget that, end of fiscal year this June, a new one starts July 1. And although there is the budget, the way state money comes in and other revenues come in, for Hadley and a lot of towns, the town is kind of like cash poor in the first quarter of the new fiscal year. And so, we can make it work, but, if, for instance, there was a lot of things happening, say in the first 4 to 5 months, depending on how the revenues are coming in and expenditures, it would be really difficult. It can be really difficult at that time of year. And so we are advertising for positions that were vacant. We're not creating new positions. So, police department had a vacancy. Kayla has resigned. And so, we're advertising her position. And so we're not creating new positions. So there's already money in the budgets for those. And so we can cover those. But if, you're right. So I think if, depending on what happens those first few months, it's really important to, still be really conscious of the budget. We couldn't say, let's take on a big debt borrowing or something if it wasn't already there. If there was a big capital need all of a sudden, the town could, that's a tight financial time in those few months. And so, there is the full budget, the money's come in different times of the year, but there are times when towns are a little more, kind of cash poor. Not that we're, losing money or we're not going to pay people. It's just the way the funds work, it doesn't really come in right until about January. So the way the state certifies free cash, the way budgets work, all of that, there is a delay. So.
But remember too, that we're not spending the free cash on the budget. So we have free cash sitting there. It is our buffer that will carry us through. We don't know yet. Hopefully in the next really soon, we'll be getting together and figuring out. I took sort of a quick look at things from my side. I haven't worked with the accountant yet, and it looks like we're okay, and we're going to have a good free cash balance again. So it will be there. It's not committed to our budget. It wasn't committed to this past year budget. So that is starting to accumulate. And so I hope what's going to happen in the fall is we'll be taking some of that and putting it into the funds that you've wanted to put them into, add to stabilization, capital stabilization. Maybe we'll begin the OPEB process again, even with just $15,000 or $20,000 to get that rolling. So getting some of these, we'll have to look and see whether we need anything more in unemployment, because we have had a lot of departures lately. I know the school still is not able to fund all of its positions. So I think all of those other accounts need to be looked at and put some money in there if we have it. So the full answer that question again, we'll be able to answer it better at your next meeting, because we'll have a good estimate as to what hopefully a good estimate as to what our free cash is
Right.
going to be.
Yeah, I mean, keep asking more, Peter. I think, I wrote kind of explaining how does a municipal budget function in a fiscal year, I think is, to me, it's like if we can help answer that, so then,
Mhm.
I gave a kind of a big overview, and there's definitely more information to be filled in there, but I think, yeah, if people don't understand, then, to me, let's figure out how to explain it, right? So, because, we can break it down by quarter, we can do other things, so I think it's a really good question. I think, I want to talk to Linda about how do we explain it, right? So what does it mean in September? What does it mean in December, in February, in May? So.
Yeah, 'cause especially with the fire, because we as a group said yes for the 850. That was for 2 fire people, and then after with the total budget, it was actually for 3. What happens if there's 3 people that are hired that, because there's openings, can you use free cash to pay for salaries? Can you do that?
No.
I'm just wondering, as
No.
making sure that we
It's-
pay them, it's like, how do we get that back? And
It's tricky.
that's what I'm concerned about and worried about.
Right.
If we haven't done anything till February, wait off onto those hirings until we know the money's
Yeah.
there. New tax come in. Yes, maybe do applications, but don't hire them until we know all that fuzziness really is going away, until we actually
Yeah.
receive those revenues. Um,
No, go ahead.
no,
Let you finish.
another question is, a year and a half ago, whether or not if anybody has looked up into it, that a year and a half ago, I think when I first started, I think the select board had a vote saying that we would increase the room tax 1% and the food tax by 25 cents. But has anybody looked into that? And I know this is all out east, that they're making the decision, but has anybody inquired about that, making a phone call or an email? Because I know that's nothing to them, but they're still getting a revenue and so are we. And that's kind of stopping us from making,
It
even
is.
if it's a small income.
Yeah,
Stopping us.
it's still moving through. It's a little slow. Yeah, I actually think it's a really good thing for Hadley, the surcharge for meals and lodging. And so, the idea would be if the state would allow it, communities could opt in for that, amount. And Hadley did. It never made its way through through the state, through the legislative process. And so I think it was picked up again. I don't know how much traction it'll have. I think, Hadley's in the unique position where it would benefit the community, because it's not, it's the residents aren't paying it. It's not, a tax across town. And it's the businesses, and there's enough I think, to support those increases. Amherst had looked into doing a home rule petition to do it before the state was going to enact it. And there's a route there. So it's more complicated than that, but it is something that I've talked to our legislators about. I think it's something I can follow up with. I think
Because the squeaky wheel always gets greased. The more you talk to them and find out,
We're trying to squeak.
as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that I've heard saying, you already hear people saying, well, this is not going to be sustainable for a year and a half
Right.
of this override.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing people concerned going, hopefully it's always easier to ask for an override to taxing the taxpayers as to any other ways of revenue.
It's not easier.
Well,
Oh,
apparently,
no.
well, in a way, it seems like it because,
No.
it seems like
It
it
didn't
because
put
when
his
it goes
fault.
for, that was last fall, because this number's a little bit lower. So because of that, everybody's saying, well, we don't want to have to come back again. So a lot of it has been on the shoulders of the finance committee of how we are supposed to budget this town, where I'm hoping that other peoples that be of other committees are going to make other suggestions and ideas instead of putting it on the shoulders of us as to where we're supposed to cut, suggestions, what we're supposed to do, where this is, sorry to say, hey, this is now up to you and the select board as to a different way of creating an income instead of raising our taxes. That's what I'm hearing a lot as to whether if it is that split tax, if it is to the reassessment, is there any way, something of charging of parking spaces in town, something to creating another type of revenue other than hitting the taxpayers again.
And Peter, when you're talking about your first question there about the revenues not coming in until February when the taxes are due, However, I know when I worked for the city of Greenfield, we had a debt exclusion go through and we were able to add it on to the preliminary tax bills. And I don't think the law has changed any. I think they'd still be able to add the override, but it's up to the assessors. They have the say on this as to whether or not they want to do it for the first two preliminary quarters. But that would take care of that issue that you brought up. And
Yeah,
You know.
I don't think that they're planning to do that, and I'm not sure that yeah, and I think as Amy mentioned, having it come in and get explained. She started.
They don't want to do it then, or?
I don't know. I don't
don't
understand the whole
think
thing,
so.
so I figured if Sue explains it, plus you understand it, between the two of you, if you're in here, we hear about what you're talking about. I don't know that she doesn't want to do it. I thought that they are doing it.
If they don't do it and they add it in February, what happens to it gets, it's all top heavy in the
Yeah.
last two quarters. Instead of spreading it out evenly, it's a shocker for the taxpayers too. Maybe Cheryl should come in and address this, and she's the assessor, right? And
Maybe we just do both.
they're both.
We can have both of them.
next week too, or next meeting.
And I assume the law hasn't changed where they still allow that to happen.
Oh, I didn't know. I know there was a change, and this is not what I was involved in finance. Wasn't there a time, Paul, you probably would know it, that in order to get the tax bills out in the first quarter, there was this a change, and I don't know whether it was town or at an upper level, that is, you're then allowed to do an estimated taxes for this first two quarters based on what the prior year's taxes were, and then any increases would then go into it. I think we always have higher bills with or without an override in the second two quarters than we do in the first two.
Right, but normally that's just the 2.5%.
Exactly, yeah.
And we're talking 13%,
yeah.
so it's gonna be quite a shocker. Instead of spreading it out like 3.5% every quarter, you're gonna get 7%.
Yeah.
And the first two quarters will look great until you get your bill in right after Christmas.
Yeah, we can, again, that's what we can follow up, but to your thing about raising revenue, I think, yeah, like I said, I think there's ways to try to do it, whether it's through fees or different things. And some of it could be slow, some of it could be faster, and it all depends on what, when it comes in and how it can be used. For instance, I met with some of the representatives of the planning board today and said, could there be let's solidify a vision for the community, right? What we want, how did it look like, say, in 20 years, 2030 to 2050? And can the land use regulations and the policies and everything match that vision? And so some of it would be, how can we allow the community to change, but still be what a lot of people like about it, right? So, if you don't want any new development and new growth, that's a big challenge, because then you really can't sustain everything else that's happening in terms of the growth. If the school age population declines so much, then there's an imbalance of in-district kids and school choice, and it really impacts all the funding formulas from the state to local. And so, to me, all of it works together, and it's not, and some of it is like, sure, let's have zoning in place to allow new development, but that might not happen for a few years. We can look at fees and other things, what we charge people, but we want to make sure we're doing it fairly and equitably. So to me, oftentimes the homeowner is the one, if you do a blanket fee increase for, say, building permits, the homeowners are the ones who pay just as much as a larger, right, applicant, a bigger company that can actually absorb a bigger fee. So are there ways to structure it that, is more equitable? So you can raise revenue, and it's also based on the service provided. So you can't, overcharge something as a municipality. The fees have to be commensurate with what they're receiving. And so, you can't say, well, it's $50 for this for residential use, and it's going to be $2,000 here without really justifying what's that expense. Is it because we need peer review for permit review or all these things? There could be ways to manage, but I will say in terms of the taxes, Hadley has low taxes, but it's actually backfired for the community. So in a few times when the town's gone out recently to apply for grants or funding or borrowing, the state has said, your taxes are so low, work on that, increase it actually, because right now it looks like you actually don't care enough about, say, certain infrastructure, certain things. So, our water or sewer rates are low. So when we're looking at doing certain funding and loans, they're like, well, increase your rates first, see how it goes for a year or two, and then let's apply later for those grants. But, what we're hearing is, you hate to say that Hadley's a rich town, but they're saying it looks like Hadley can afford things. Your rates are low. Let's make sure that there's still enough, I want to say cost burden to the community, and then you can be eligible for other funding. It's an odd way to say it, but the appearance is, oh wow, we don't want to pay more, but we want really good services. We want our water lines fixed. We want all these things. And so again, is there a good vision for the town? Can we support it? I agree. I don't, I live in South Deerfield. I'm in a sewer district. My sewer bill for 6 months, I just got the bill is $1,100. It's gonna be $2,200 for the year. It used to be $400 a few years ago. Probably in a few years, I'll be paying $2,500 just for my sewer bill. That's not my water bill, my fire district bill, or my real estate taxes. And so, it's different because it's a sewer district, and we have, there's things that they're saying it's going toward. But, when it's $26 per 1,000 gallons and a minimum charge of 500, it's a lot of money, when a few years ago it was, say, $7 per 1,000 and a minimum charge of like $75. And so I don't want to pay it.
Gotta pay for that new plant that they put in there.
But
New plant, they gotta pay for the new plant.
exactly. But and there's some other things, like, we got all new water lines are doing in town to get the lead out, right? So new, the EPA. So I get it. Do I like paying it? Randy Eyes would say, I'm willing, I don't like it. And it's the same thing. I mean, so we just had the water assessment management plan for Public Works, and there's, still water pipes in town that are 120, over 100 years old. Some of almost 120. They need to be replaced. It's very expensive. And so there's discussions, how can the town fund kind of those public infrastructure improvements? So some of it will be through rate increases, and we're looking at, grants and other ways to do it. So yeah, I mean, I think there's, like I said, I think there's a lot of ways to do it. I think new revenue is really important. And so, that goes to everything from, like I said, land use changes to regulation changes to fees and licenses to all these things. Right, explore a split tax rate. Who knows if it's going to be beneficial, but what are the ways to do it? The meals and lodging tax, that local option. I really think working with the state on the pilot program for preserved land. I think there's a lot of land in Hadley that could be preserved and should be preserved. It's a double-edged sword. Let's go preserve that land. It's taxed less, and then the town doesn't get, development potential from it, and then it can't be built on, and the state reimburses the town very low for that. So to me, that's a really important thing for Hadley. I think school funding is really important. Chapter 90 funding for small towns. And those are things that I would like to be working on, at the same time we're doing all these other things. And like I said, it may not happen right away, but right, if we can get traction for some of these and have it be fruitful 2 years from now, I think it'll be really helpful for not just Hadley, right, for all of mostly Western Mass. Say like, Pioneer Valley and Berkshire County. There's just an article from the Berkshire Eagle, Montgomery, gets $10 per acre for preserved land. And they mentioned Seekonk gets, $1,000 or $10,000 per acre for preserved land. But they're like, we have so much land, and it's, it's drinking water quality, it's environmental quality, and we get $10, yet these communities in Eastern Mass get, multitudes more, and it's fragmented. It's not valuable in terms of ecosystem benefits for all these things. And so, even if you don't change the pot of money that's allocated across this, you don't increase it, but you change the allocation ratio, Hadley and all these other towns can get so much more. Yeah, that means the eastern towns will get less, and they probably really relied on that funding. At the same time, to me, it's like, well, Hadley has, you say the most preserved land of any community proportionally. And that's, I think that's something to be proud of. But then it's also hurtful when it's like, oh, how do you grow? How do you fund all these things, keep taxes low? And so there's things that are kind of outside of our control that we can lean on and push on. And then there's other things we can try to explore. And so for future meetings, like we talked about, it'd be great to have some of these ideas. Like I don't have all the answers, and I'm sure everyone has other ideas, and I'd be great to hear from in the next few months. Like, what can we do?
Like the state too, or not the state, but all the municipalities should maybe get together and really take a look at the state aid formulas too. Like, there's something flawed in there. I don't know for sure, but I thought I read something where when we're compared to other states, we're one of the lower percentages of state aid that come downstream to the municipalities. I don't know, does anyone know if that's accurate or not?
Other states.
Well, that was like the Mass Municipal Association put out the report last year, just saying that, right, the state aid, although the amount of money has gone up, the percent actually has decreased. And so if you looked at, at it, accounting for inflation, it's, we're years behind in terms of where it could be.
And compared to other
Right, right,
states too.
Yeah. Again, I know Senator Comerford's talked about that, but again, that's a bigger
Mhm.
discussion. And, that means that if we don't increase, the money that the state's getting, if it stays the same and we're saying, well, let's give the 4 western counties more through different, ratios, then, it's going to be less somewhere else. And so it will be, there'll be a lot of discussions about that.
It sounds like it's a statewide problem because so many municipalities are asking for overrides all of a sudden.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If we were getting more state aid, I think that would really reduce that number.
It would.
And the question would be, is the proper assessment for the commercial property on Route 9? That's what I heard a lot of.
Yeah.
Is it truly what it is of what it should be? Because I've listened to some of the planning boards, and when you listen to what some of these buildings of their estimated values are, it's very, very low. And I'm seeing of how much my tax bill is.
Yeah.
Maybe that being addressed as to, how that's being assessed. What are your thoughts? I mean,
Yeah.
you're hearing from us as you being the town administrator, what kind of growth are you seeing that your thoughts are? Because you've been listening to the town of the problems we've had for the past 2 years,
Right.
and you got your foot in the door and you're saying, okay, what are some of the ideas that you're thinking of that projected growth? Or are you still thinking about it until you really bring it out in the open?
Yeah, no, I mean, for instance, the planning board has been meeting for a while. There's a subcommittee looking at 40R, so it's a smart growth overlay district along Route 9. And it was discussed at their last meeting, and it's something they would want to move forward. And, so it's a zoning overlay, you can define it how you want in terms of boundaries and area. And it's really looking at the properties just adjacent to Route 9, so north and south, allowing 3- and 4-story buildings, mixed-use buildings, multi-unit apartment buildings, townhouses, smaller commercial spaces, and really in a discrete area. And it's a statewide tool, so 40R is Mass General Law. You can do it different ways, but 20% of the units have to be affordable, and it's locally regulated, so you can have any design requirements you want, certain things. And so the board is looking at it, and to me, I think it's a great idea from a lot of reasons, but one is actually as a revenue generating strategy. To me, it's you might look at what they're proposing and say, wow, that's a lot of town. But if you look at it, the whole town of Hadley, it's proportionally a very small area that they're saying, most of it's already developed. So in they kind of have 2 smart growth areas, and one of them, all the properties are already developed with buildings. And so really, to do anything, you'd have to redevelop, whether that means tear down the building or, add on to it. But, it's an idea to say, okay, we already have, I want to say, sacrificed the Route 9 area, but it's what's happened. And can we actually now take advantage of it? So if the malls are failing, what can we do there? Can we allow 3-story buildings with apartments and other stores to come in and generate new revenue? And that, to me, that's one idea, right? So it's a longer term thing, but it's an opportunity for new growth. I think, we still look at the budget. Are there ways to save? I think there are some ways to save, restructuring positions and things, but it's not going to yield, $1 million here and $1 million there, right? It'll be enough to help. But I think like having a strong building department is really important. I think is evidenced by the vacancies in there now. So, the fees need to be appropriate, right? So you collect the money when people apply for permits. And then, you go through inspections, you get your occupancy. And then if everything's done correctly, then it's assessed at the right value, and then you get your assessments done correctly. So you're in that tax revenue. So, it's like there's a stream of how it all works. And so to me, having a strong building department is really important. It's one of the few departments that can bring in a lot of revenue for a community. That doesn't mean I'd like to say we get to yes to everything. So, if something doesn't fit the zoning or the building code, you can say no, or you could say, well, how can we help an applicant, right? To me, we're customer service as municipal employees. And so, I think that, you don't want to like say, okay, we're going to get everything wrong and tax you and get all the codes and, charge all these permit fees. To me, we want to help someone do it right. And then say, okay, yeah, you're actually a commercial business. Here's what you're worth. We're going to assess you, appropriately. I think the assessors are doing that. I think to your question though, it's nuanced, right? Like, are there the right values being recorded? So I think our assessments are actually what we do is really accurate based, especially residential, based on what the state looks at. But I think for commercial, I think it's right. I think we have to dig a little deeper. And so there's a few different ways commercial property assessments work. I don't know many of the details, but I think it's a good question to say, are we actually assessing them the right way to get the most value from them? Because that is important. And so I know for the residential piece, we're at a really good assessment. So we're higher than we were. We're more accurate based on market values and everything, how the state looks at it than we were a few years ago. So how these residential assessments are, almost 1-to-1, just really good in terms of accuracy. But so for new growth, I mean, it's like, yeah, you can do fees, you can do restructuring, you can have new zoning and regulations. I mean, those are all part of it. And so it's like the state pieces. I think I don't have like a silver bullet, like, oh, we're going to do this. We're looking at shared services with neighboring communities. Can we share some municipal offices or staff or personnel? Can we, all these things are ways to save money. And it's not all going to be like, oh, wow, this is a really big savings. I know in the past, there's been discussions to say of a shared DPW facility between Hadley and Amherst. Because the construction costs are so high, could you actually have a shared facility and figure out how does that work between the two communities? I mean, is that a discussion worth having again, knowing that Amherst needs one, Hadley needs one? Maybe you put the line down the middle, like, in the movies where that's your side of the room and that's our side. But yeah, but it's like all those things, we've talked to different communities and it's actually really difficult to share staff, for instance. So with the building department, we've talked to a few different communities and said, oh, hey, is there a way we could, borrow staff for this amount of time? We have Dave Waskevitz from Amherst, but he's, working really, more than one full-time job. And so we reached out to a few communities and, even for Kayla's position, it's like, well, this person works 30 hours here. Maybe they could do 10 here, but their hours here are variable. And so it's really hard to say, oh, let's just, work with 4 neighboring communities and all have, one conservation agent. It was done in Franklin County and there's someone doing 6 communities. But I think the workload in those communities are so little that they can manage it. I think Hadley is at the point where, for most departments and most positions, you need at least one full-time equivalent and then maybe a little bit more. And so it's really hard to find the community that has someone who can give us 10 hours and we can pull someone from here or there, but we're looking at it. So, we've reached out to different neighboring communities and said, okay, how can we maybe have a few positions that are shared between communities? Could we share fire, police? What are the ways to save money? Again, I don't, these are ideas and they've been had before by different communities and I don't have, say answers, but those are things I'd like to explore.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we share, fire equipment if they're not being used? Can we share DPW equipment with neighboring communities? I don't.
We had a brand new pump truck that's 3 years old, and we should be farming that thing out and renting it out
Right.
if it's possible to making some sort of a revenue.
Right.
I mean, I like that the planning board has gone about and increased the square footage when it comes to commercial property.
Right.
That might give more opportunities. I think it's now over 75,000. But you're talking about the 40R, you're talking changing of the bylaws when it comes to apartments. And I don't know how the revenues are.
Right.
When it comes to that, of course, everybody, commercial is better because there's less on the actual infrastructure on the town, less on fire, police, and ambulance. You do things with 40R. Now you're changing the infrastructure, and then you're potentially in 10 years down the road, they're going to say, there's so many people in these apartments. Now we need to buy a new school for 200 million. So really, was it worth it for the revenues of these apartments to now having to go, more police, fire, water, sewer, infrastructure? Now we have to get a new school.
Right.
So hopefully those things are also going to be in consideration. What could happen with these, I heard 400 apartments.
Right.
You get 400 apartments and one child in one of those apartments, that's 100 kids.
Right.
We're not getting school choice kids now. Now we're paying for our own kids.
Right.
And then if they need to be school choiced out, now we're, as taxpayers, are having to pay those other schools for our own kids.
Right.
So things that I'm hoping other people are thinking about, not just seeing the end number of what it's going to take for the revenues, but the infrastructure to, the expenses of it. And later for, buying a new school sounded great, but for $1 million a year of revenues, for as many times, if you talk to the police chief and fire chief and ambulance out there, how many calls have we had in those places that are on Route 9?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I've heard a few anecdotes, but I think I've also heard from, Dr. McKenzie that the school has capacity to add at all ages and class sizes and not, still, not increase the number of staff or teachers or building size. So, right, there probably is a tipping point. But even if we said there's 400 units and some of those could be for singles, for individuals, for whatever, I don't think that would overwhelm the school.
But it's the taxpayer's expense.
Right.
It's different when you're getting a revenue from school
Right.
choice. It's easy to say, yeah, we've got plenty of room, but
Right.
now the taxpayers are paying for this.
Right, but
There is a difference.
there is a difference. But I actually think that if the way, to me, the trends are working, Hadley's going to become more reliant on school choice every year because there's less in-district kids.
Mhm.
And so that's actually a problem for funding formulas and for everything. And so I actually think we need to have, more school-age kids in the next, say, 5 to 10 years entering the school system from in-district and trying to keep bringing in school choice. I think Hadley has really strong schools. That's great. Kids want a choice in. But when, at some point that balance is going to tip and actually it's going to hurt in terms of the way the funding works from the state and everyone else, and even the reimbursement costs. So if there are more in-district kids, I'm not saying, like a lot, but if there was like a few more incrementally in each grade, each class level, then that's actually really helpful for the community.
Do you have any kids?
I do have 3.
Okay. Pretty expensive, aren't they?
They are. I'm glad I don't have to do my pay for daycare for all 3 of them.
Right, exactly. And
The sewer costs alone, apparently.
my food bill.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Yes, it's nice, but I remember years ago, there was one of those things where, okay, the houses are too, people want their kids to be living in town in these houses, but now we've assessed these houses too much. There's no way you could have your kid to afford a house in Hadley.
Right. No,
So it's reversed because there used to be the little houses. Now they made them those ADUs.
Right.
Now you can't afford it.
Right.
So
Yeah, no, I mean, they're good questions. So, I think, especially with that 40R, I mean, I think it is to say, well, what is the real cost of some of these developments? And so, I've always heard that actually seniors are the largest driver of ambulance calls, not families. And there's a ton of police calls to the commercial areas. So, I mean, I have a scanner in my office. It is all day to the commercial areas.
I think Jennifer said they go to Greenleaf every single day.
Yeah.
There's a call over there.
And so but I think but to help answer those questions, I think we can dig into that data. So I think it is worth having that, and we could ask neighboring communities. So, when Valley CDC was doing a development in Amherst, there was a big discussion of that. And so we asked them, all your other properties in Northampton, what is your largest call volume? We asked different towns, like, okay, where, are there a lot of ambulance calls for lower income developments? And the answer was like, not really. Right. And it came out that, again, it was for seniors and it was for other things, but it wasn't for the housing that was being built. And so, again, but I think we can, I think it's important to keep updating those numbers. So we can talk to police and fire here and say, okay, they have logs, like, okay, what is it? And what is the average cost per call? And we talk to the schools, what do you think? And so I think that's all, it's all part of the conversation. I wouldn't want to say, yeah, let's build so many apartments that now we need a new elementary school. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying
Right.
that, I think having a mixed use building on Route 9, say it's an 80 unit mixed use building, you have 80 apartments, and maybe it has, say, 6 small residential or commercial spaces, non-residential spaces. When the town updated its master plan in 17, a lot of people said, oh, I'd love to have more, more small spaces for, local businesses or smaller businesses. And so to me, those mixed use buildings are trying to answer that too. It's not, you're not going to get a Home Depot necessarily with apartments above. You might have a pretty big building, but you have smaller spaces inside that could be for different kinds of shops or restaurants. And so, to me, it's meeting a few different needs. And yeah, at some point it could be, what if the town had a few of those and all of a sudden you're like, okay, wow, we have a lot of new units. I think the whole time we have to be reevaluating, okay, what are the impacts to cost of services to schools? And maybe at some point you say, okay, we need to change the zoning again, right? It served its purpose. It got us where it needed to be. And we don't want that growth anymore. I mean, I think, a lot of zoning in most of the communities have been in the books for decades and it doesn't change. And it's really hard to change zoning. But I think moving forward, I think especially in the next so many years, zoning and land use regulations and certain regulations have to be a little bit more nimble. Like, yeah, we should be looking at our fee structure probably every other year. We should be looking at zoning more closely every year. I don't want to say we have to reorganize town hall and municipal staffing every year, but I'd love to have a great structure of how that flows. And so we're meeting with different departments and say, okay, what do you really need? And maybe we don't fill those positions now, but to me, this is a good structure we have in place for, say, public works, for fire, for town, for municipal offices. And so, and then we can say, okay, this is the structure we like. How do we make it work? Do we talk to neighboring towns to have this half position filled and shared? Do we have other things? And like I said, I think, there's a lot of ideas out there,
Right.
a lot of examples from other communities we're looking at. It's not, I think all of it is going to work together. Unfortunately, I don't have here's how we're gonna do it,
Right.
the best answer.
Now,
but-
being in Amherst, is there a lot of those mixed use, commercial on the bottom, residential on top? Do you have many of those in Amherst when you were there?
Yeah,
I don't think it would work.
yeah,
Only because I think people would be concerned about, if you had a phone store on the bottom and there were people that were living up above, are they gonna have to be worried about, their supplies? Are you gonna have a restaurant, or like, I know we've already got a Jersey Mike's, but you got someone upstairs that's cooking and it smells like,
Right.
Chinese food or fish, something like that. And what happens if, you get I know it's the combination of both, the dual unit, the
Right,
commercial on the bottom
Yeah.
and the residential up top, but what happens with those commercial that everybody thinks is gonna be a great idea, that's half this size and they're vacant?
right, yeah. Yeah, no, I think they're valid questions, and so I think the, building code today, and you could always specify in your conditions, the land use permits, certain separations of uses. So you could say that, for this mixed use building, it's, you could say you don't allow restaurants in it. Or you say if it's a restaurant, you have to make sure you have your venting, all that stuff pre-planned. And so in downtown Amherst, some of the newer buildings were mixed use. And so at first the concern was, okay, they're gonna be filled with students, it's gonna be
That would
awful.
be my concern.
Right.
Hadley.
So, the developers and the private owners, they never complain with what is the percentage, but I heard it can be anywhere from, say, 60 to 80% students, undergraduates. So there's always a percentage of units that aren't students.
Mhm.
And so once they got over what percentage of students, then they're like, well, they're not gonna be well managed. Actually, they're some of the best managed properties in town because the landlords are really strict. They have like a zero tolerance policy for anything. So, if you are caught smoking, if you have parties, like you're done, your lease, for the cost you're paying to rent that unit, you don't violate your lease. So
Right.
they're actually really well managed. And then the argument was, well, they're ugly. Yeah, I think some of them are pretty ugly. So we can control the architecture a little bit more with our zoning. So, there's always some things there,
Mhm.
and then, the units are vacant, the commercial units are vacant. So in my time there near the end, we started putting conditions in the planning board and zoning board that the applicant had to come back within 6 months or a year and report on those vacancies, in part because you could almost say they're out of compliance with their permit. And so we're trying to get to the point where would we actually, instead of having a carrot, we'd have a stick and say, you're out of compliance with your special permit. We're gonna give you, say, like a cease and desist, or when you have to renew, we're not gonna renew certain things, and we're gonna start fining you because you're not trying hard enough to fill your commercial space. It's a really tricky thing to manage.
What can you do if you have an economic downturn and?
True, but so what we've always heard is that the rental units subsidize the commercial on the first floor. So that the rents are high enough that they don't even care what's on the first floor, right? If they're vacant for a year, obviously they don't need that rental income from that commercial space because they're paying for it with the residential. So to me, if that's the case, you can put anything in that commercial space. Right? You could make it, for the time being, it could be an interim use, make it an art gallery, make it a community space. It could be anything. If you actually don't need that rental income because your residential units are paying for it, then that means it can be anything. You're basically giving it away. So it's strange to me that someone would be willing to keep it empty.
Don't say that too loud.
Yeah, no. But if you go, if you're in Amherst, or some spaces that might have been vacant for over a year,
Mhm.
and you're like, how is that? Are they, I don't know. Were they not trying hard enough? Did it not, is it just really difficult
Can
to
you make
fill?
those stringent stipulations on enforcing, like you said, if there's an economic problem, or people are just saying, I just don't want to be having students, doesn't matter if they're the 60 to the 80%,
Yeah.
or other people living there. They're afraid for their commercial business being above people,
Yeah.
and it's vacant, so that's,
Yeah, no,
concerned about that.
Yeah,
So,
but I
but
think-
I guess it's a thought.
mixed use, mixed use examples are, they're a lot more common than they were, say, 15 years ago. So I think the model works. I think the difficulty is finding what is the right size. So, how many floors, what's the design, what's kind of the conditions for the commercial space, whatever, we'll call it non-residential. It could be office space, it could be other things. I even think with like the clean manufacturing, I mean, you could have, like 3D printing in a space now and do some really cool things. It's not a noxious use, right? So zoning would say typically, well, that's a manufacturing use. It can't be in a mixed use building. But with the new technology, I feel like you can have different uses that you wouldn't have thought about 10 years ago now in a mixed use building. I do think it's a valid concern, though. I can't say I don't want to have, you don't want to have so many stipulations or conditions on a building that you make it really difficult to operate or, manage. And so I wouldn't put a condition on that says, right, it has to be these kinds of uses. And if you're not, you're gonna, get fined.
No, I'm not saying
Yeah,
like that.
right.
I'm more concerned for the commercial properties
Yeah.
and what them being vacant because of what's up above. That's my concern. Then we have vacant property.
I've never heard that question, that the commercial is worried about what's above.
Most of the time, the commercial is during the day and then everybody's
Right,
at
yeah.
work up above.
Yeah.
For the most part, they're at work when they're open and vice
Right.
versa.
But I think, some of it is then the developer has to plan it correctly. So
Mhm.
what's the floor height? What's the soundproofing? What's the venting? So in Amherst, there was a mixed use building proposed and they didn't think they were going to do restaurants on the first floor. A restaurant really wanted to move in. It was already under construction. They said, wait a minute, we need a vent shaft going up. Either it's going to be external all the way, or can we make it internal? And that's a design problem. And so to me, if here we were saying, okay, maybe they would be restaurants, it's a question that we'd have to ask applicants. Come in with your design to say it's going to be restaurant ready. So have a chase in the building somewhere that could be for venting, because if you don't, it's going to have to be external venting.
Have them all be prefab for that
Right.
option first.
Right.
And then if they don't use it, you don't use it, but it's already there and
Right.
existing, so it costs less.
Right. I think more developers are getting used to mixed use buildings. So I think they're probably having some of these considerations beforehand.
Mhm.
I'd say, like I said, 10 years ago, I don't think they were. And so they built a mixed use building and then they try to fill the space. Whereas I think now it's more intentional. What is the use first? And then let's build the building around it. But it's a good question. Like I said, I feel like we would, if the 40 hours to move forward, these are questions we would want to have answered. And we can talk to developers about how they would approach that.
So, moving along, communication, just to go back to, we talked about, some communication. One of the things that you do is you do the town administrator report, which is great. I see that, it's, David Phil's been putting it on the Hadley community page, which is great. I was wondering when you do it after you present it, if there's any way, whether it's online or, you can email it to us.
Yes.
Just so that we're on board as well.
Yeah, no, I said I would, and I.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the next thing would be, and I don't know whether it be in a separate email or something, but with this, because I don't know if you've all watched all the select board meetings, and I started watching, but I don't always watch them all the way through. Maybe I watch part of it. But if we are hiring or we are spending any money whatsoever, could we, that was done at the select board level. So say they hired someone, let's say they're replacing Kayla. Okay, yes, it's just a replacement, but we could say, okay, if you could tell us, oh, new person hired, replaced Kayla, and this is the salary, because if we're gonna be a lot less, if we're gonna be a lot more, we just kind of want to know, is it the exact, like, just tell us where the salary is.
You want to know if it impacts the budget.
Yes.
Yeah.
So-
I think anything that impacts the budget, it's a change. That's
So that's
That's
what we're
something to-
looking for,
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we understand, we don't need to know the person itself.
Right, yeah. No, I think I think we had met, Linda and I met with Pam and Amy, and I think, to me, with the finance committee, I'd like to have, transparent communication, and if there are things you're missing or you'd like to have, I mean, we can talk about it, and, we have, I'll have to build it into a routine, but I think it'd be nice to have
Yeah.
those procedures in place, so you're not left wondering, like, okay, where are we with this? And so, we give quarterly updates to the select board and you, but, I'd like to every month, I've been telling Linda, like, maybe it's like the first meeting, talk about finances with the select board, just so, even if it's just like for a few minutes, just like, here's a quick snapshot of where we are. Because I think it's a really important thing to be aware of. Okay, are we, health insurance costs are high. right?
Mhm.
And they're, I mentioned it, and they're still gonna be high, and employees are now saying, because it was just end of, open enrollment. Some people are like, I might try to find work elsewhere, like, the insurance costs are so high. And Hadley's not alone, right? It's every community within.
Where are they gonna go?
But the other
Right.
communities that say pay more than the
Yeah.
percent we do, or if they're with a different insurance group, the rates are lower.
Yeah, they may pay more.
I even propose about raising the difference because it's 65-35 that I was saying 60-40.
Right.
Just suggestions as to the town.
Yeah, but I think actually
Some ideas.
the town would need to pay more because the insurance cost paid by the employee is really high. So it'd be a cost to the town, but could you then retain and keep workers? And so when I hear people who've been here saying, like, I think I might leave because it's too hard to insure my family. I mean, there are people who work here who the cost of the insurance is more than they make. And so but they're doing it for the insurance.
Mhm.
And so the fact that, to insure a family costs over $1,000 a month, it's a lot.
That's
But-
everybody. Right?
Yeah, it is everyone though. But yeah, I think for the communication piece, I mean, that can go yeah, I'd like to, yeah, have that be more transparent. So keep the budget top of mind. We can try to keep the finance committee, right, updated.
So
yeah.
maybe if the select board has a item that is going to be a new contract, or say,
Right.
let's say, I know that, maybe I was thinking the solar, or even the bike share or something that I think you talked about. I know that's not going through, but say it was, or whatever. I would think if we could even set that up to be on a joint meeting, one of our joint meetings, so that we could hear if it's a new, something that's gonna affect finances, whether it's good, whether it's bad,
Mhm.
maybe it's more revenues coming in. But a lot of times you have someone come to the select board and do a presentation.
Yeah.
It would be a great presentation to do in a joint meeting for us too. So that we see what's going on and know a little bit about it.
Mhm.
And then if we do have questions, we could ask them right then and there
Mhm.
in a joint meeting. So anything to do with the budget, it'd be good.
How often are we planning buy boards? Because if it's gonna be once a month, then a presentation could be geared towards that one, but if you're meeting every couple of months, I don't think that
Well,
they
it
would be.
depends on how many,
off.
if we could make it, if
Yeah.
there was, it depends on
Yeah.
what's coming up and what's happening.
Hmm.
Now, look at how many buy boards just on those minutes alone. I mean, we had more buy boards than we had regular finance meetings. But that was a special circumstance, but we're open to the buy boards if there's something happening. And then we can, especially getting closer to the a town meeting, we're gonna do more.
Yeah, but I think, yeah, the buy board isn't, yeah, if there could be a better schedule or a regular pattern to them. For instance, we're out to have one pretty soon just for year-end transfers.
Yep.
And I just write down what are other things we could talk about at that meeting,
Mhm.
between finance and select board, but. Yeah, it is interesting, how to coordinate that. I think, to me, it's like, again, I said, it'd be great to have more systems of meetings and other things. And so if we have you say, okay, like every other month, the first select board meeting could be a buy board meeting, for instance. And then, if that worked, right, and we could carve that time off, then, you could meet and then, be there for part of it. And then, you either could adjourn or you could have, hold as, continue to meet separately, but at least we get the buy board piece done.
Yep.
So we could, let's figure out if there's a way to make that more.
We can plan our lives too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Instead of can you do this next week, or
Right.
at least it's set up?
Yep.
Especially with sports.
mhm.
Yeah,
So down the road, the first Wednesday of the month.
Right.
I mean, except for this one that we're
Yeah.
gonna be looking at because we wanna do year-end transfers,
Right.
so we're gonna wanna look at the third Wednesday.
right, but yeah,
Right,
but
I
having
think-
some regularity to it
Yeah.
would be helpful, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, Peter, I don't know if you had other questions or comments, I didn't wanna,
No,
I mean,
no,
but no.
I don't want to be, if there's any questions from other people on the board, if they have anything else.
But yeah, so-
I had somebody ask me about the restaurant or on River Drive, that Cars. I'm sure you've been updated
Yeah.
about that next to the fire station. And Linda, you could help me out with this. When it comes to, I know they're paying the town or whatever their fee is what they've made.
I don't know.
When it comes to on the annual report, how would that be, or where would that show up? With that revenue, would it go into just the general budget when it
Does
comes
it-
to something?
It does go into the general budget and depending on whether it's going to be regular or not, it could just end up being a miscellaneous revenue. We do have intermittent rental of fields when the town has had property. And sometimes it gets its own line item depending on the size and the number of them. But my guess is this is a temporary.
Yeah, it's a temporary, it's seasonal.
So
Yeah, it's for the
it's
season.
gonna come in as miscellaneous.
Done by
Not-
October, mid-October, usually they wrap up.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I don't know if it's even planned, I don't even know if they've talked about next year, at this point, because we don't know what the town, yeah.
Yeah. If you can make $10, you should be able to charge.
It's out there.
Yeah, and I didn't know because that's town property. Does the town mow that and maintain that? Or because they're renting, they're
Yeah.
doing the maintaining on that?
Right, yeah, so.
It's getting trampled, I think.
Yeah, so usually for that kind of use, the town, we did a license because it can be revocable. So you wouldn't do a lease, you do a license. So it's a license just for this year. I think it was May through November.
Mm-hmm.
It can be renewed. And there was, the parking area was outlined on a plan.
Mhm.
And then there was, conditions in terms of the maintenance. I think, it happened as I was starting here, but I think all the maintenance is on cars. I think
Good.
the fire department maybe mowed it first. The town did just to lay it out, but I think everything else is for cars.
Yeah, he's
pretty
mowing
good.
it, I know.
Right.
Is that weekends or every day?
It's Wednesday to.
Well,
No, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
That was Wednesday.
Yeah.
That was on Wednesday.
Friday.
I was surprised to see it during the week.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I thought this was.
And then
weekend.
another thing is, because it's town property, is there insurance covered on that through cars, knowing that the town isn't liable if someone decides to drink too much apple cider and twist their
Imagine
ankle?
that.
Yeah, so in the license agreement, there's some,
Into my garage.
but in the license agreement, there's some safeguards for that.
Okay.
So yeah, it's all in the document. But
Okay.
yeah, no, they're all, yeah, I had some similar questions, but I think it was, the attorney looked at it.
We're covered.
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I
it's,
had the same question too. It asked me that, not that I had it, but
Right.
people were asking me about it too. And I said, I
Thank you.
assume they have
Yeah.
insurance.
yeah, I mean, they both do, town and cars, but it's all, it's really their responsibility. Looking at the agenda, we did have the override, so as if we had good, again, if others have questions, let me know or comments on it. I just, we wanted to show where the money is going, and it was some overrides are general overrides, right? Where it's like you just get the money and the town can decide where it goes. This one is pretty line item specific, and so, it,
We voted these already at town meeting.
Yep.
yeah, so these, so it's
Yeah.
pretty
Yep.
much set in terms of that, the supplement that was handed out shows it. So, if there's any questions there, I'd have Linda answer them.
No,
But,
that's fine.
no.
And for the public, these are, because we can talk about this, but we haven't quite worked out how to share, if you wanted to share it, but if we don't, how to share documents.
Yeah, we wanted.
Yeah,
We'll get,
On there.
we'll get to that,
yeah,
the
but
public.
they will be posted, I think they were posted online after the last select board meeting.
right.
To show, it's very much the handout that was at town meeting, for the budget, but now the final column is the new amount, including the override, and then again, specifically the increases, the lines that were increased according to the handout that went to town
Yeah.
meeting.
Linda, where do we look
Yeah,
for that? You said it's close to where, do you know?
On the town, on the select board.
It'd be in the board docs packet
Yeah.
for the select board. I
Oh, I
think
think she actually posted it
they
online.
maybe post some, so I think, yeah, I think-
I'll take a look while you.
yeah, Alex, I think at one point we'll pull you in. I think, we had talked about when we met was, especially for the next budget cycle, it doesn't have to be for tonight, but like, how can we share this on the screen so people who are watching can see it? Cause
What we're
like,
talking
because
about.
as we're talking about it, it's like, oh, look at this line, and everyone's like, I can't see it. So that's to me, I think it's important because, I watch the meetings and I would be like, okay, wait a minute. If I didn't have my computer up or another screen up, you can't see what you're talking about. And then the board docs thing is interesting. The parent company is still the same, but they are updating their platform, and the town has the ability to have a few more committees have that kind of functionality. And so the finance committee would be one we'd want
Right
to
up
have.
top.
So then documents could be uploaded there
Right.
and live on, like online hopefully in a in a way that the public and you can all access them.
Right, particularly during budget season, when we're talking about the library budget, for example, and have it right on the screen. And instead of, I know you're asking questions of
But
people,
everybody
but
could see
nobody
what
at
we're
home
looking
knows
for.
what we're talking about. Even though we refer to what page in the budget book, and they can find the budget book on the top, that's not the same, give
Right.
them. I think if we put it right up, this is the budget we're talking about now, and then we move on to the next one. So I think that's the most important time of the year for you to have that.
Yeah. So
And
Alex-
again, I don't know I know at the select board meetings, Jennifer sits with a laptop and she does it, and
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I don't
it's,
think to bring a
in
laptop.
terms of like sharing the screen, for instance, like if I'm here, like, I don't have a Zoom account, but it's like, okay, if we want to look at this document and I had it,
Yeah.
who can do that? I mean, to me, it would be like, could staff or someone on the committee be able to share that document and then,
We'd have to be in a Zoom meeting instead of on the
Yeah.
owl, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're in a Zoom meeting now.
but
Um,
I guess if I have my laptop here, I could be
Right.
logged in on the Zoom meeting
Yeah, I mean,
and share my screen. But as a participant, I wouldn't be allowed to share my screen.
you could. You could.
Alex will let you.
Well,
Yeah.
me or Jennifer could let you. She has a lot of safeguards on Zoom meetings now
Yeah.
for obvious reasons,
Right.
but
But there's a
um,
way to do that.
there's a way to do that, and you don't really need a Zoom account
Okay.
to be able to share your screen. You can,
But going through your browser though, my browser for whatever reason gets, like glitchy, so if I had.
Yeah.
But so there's a way to do it, so if someone brought a laptop to this meeting, we could share documents.
absolutely.
They
All
do
you-
make portable scanners too, that if you had something from there to scanning a document to go to the laptop
I
and
have
it being
that.
brought up.
I have
I
that
I
on
guess on
my
my
phone.
phone, yeah.
I just
I have it.
looked that up.
Yeah.
I do, I have it. It works
Yeah.
great. I use it for the banner committee.
So the other thing is, are you watching, since we are hybrid, Alex, are you watching in case, and you see who's on there right
Mhm.
now?
Yep.
Okay, so if someone
We're
had,
safe now.
oh,
But if somebody had a question or something, you.
Oh, yeah, they can raise their hand and.
you,
they can-
because we wouldn't see that. So you would have to just tell us, I guess, or whoever's monitoring it.
Okay, and I guess, someone can be sharing the screen, I guess the idea would be that we could also then see
And
it.
what I was
Yeah.
trying to do that for a
No,
reason.
that's fine, yeah.
Today, but
Okay,
But I think, but for this next budget cycle, it'd be great to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Just so everyone can see.
But since we had people this year.
I know.
We had guests.
That's great, yeah.
Probably have more watching at home too, so.
Right?
Yeah.
and and say if this were not on Zoom, we could, if you were to send me the files in advance,
Mhm.
I could put it into live broadcast. Or in post.
How does that work in a live broadcast? Is it just like a link or a document people could, I don't know how it works, like, do they see it?
I can make it so that they can see it. So if you're seeing, say
Yeah, yeah.
you were wanting to share the role of the finance committee,
Right,
if you were to send me the file.
Yeah.
And I turn it into an image, I could put it on the screen for people to watch at home.
so as we're talking about that topic,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, I guess so, yeah, we can figure out, I think so there's ways to do it, we can figure out what's.
well, I think that's, can you tell me how many people are on right now?
2 over people.
Two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once having
I
my
got-
wife.
But then,
The second is the reason, like, that's great, because I think that was one of the biggest reasons why we want to do this hybrid,
Right.
is so that people can, if they're watching it later,
Mhm.
they can see what we're talking about.
And I use Zoom every day at work and
Yeah.
the share stuff and that, so I'm pretty knowledgeable with that, so, but I don't have a laptop. I only have a tablet, so.
So we have limited laptops people can borrow. It's a case by case, like if there's 2 other meetings in the building, that we couldn't give out a laptop, but we could give a laptop to people to borrow if needed.
But yeah, I think yeah, let's talk, I'd be nice to, again, get it down, so like, okay, we're gonna, next meeting, we're gonna talk about this, and we can then share it.
Yeah.
And everyone can see it, and people at home can see it, and then people watch later can see it.
Great.
Yeah, sounds like we can do that.
Mhm.
I think, and one of the other things that we talked about in our meeting that we had with Nate a couple weeks ago was the email.
Mhm.
A finance email. As
Yeah.
well. I know you guys were looking into that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think we have to, there's a cost to the emails, and so I was told, well, I don't know, if we get so many email accounts and that, they weren't being used, and so I can look again, I can ask again, but I think there's like so many that we get through our IT system and
So not for everyone, but the fact is,
Yeah, yeah,
the
I know.
one similar to the planning board where
Yeah.
if the chair changes, it's
Right.
just goes to that.
Yeah, planning board's planning at
Yeah, so it'd be
hadleyma.gov.
finance.
So if
Yeah.
finance at hadleyma.gov, just one, and then
Whoever,
so that
you
the
know.
whoever's chair or
Yeah.
clerk and
Or whoever
or
they-
whoever, someone is designated to handle it and can get information out to the others. You
Mhm.
just want to be careful that you don't turn it into a discussion
Yeah.
email, but that's got other
Yeah,
requirements.
I'll ask again. Yeah, so I mean, the idea was right to have a generic finance at, say, Hadley email.
Mhm.
That way it always lives with the chair and really,
And it's a record on your side of
right.
all of the emails going back and forth, because
Right.
we've got them all through different emails between all of us at this point.
Because typically I wouldn't provide personal email addresses, right? So, anything that can be public information I'd share about board and committee members, I wouldn't give out personal email addresses unless you told me to. Even then, I'd even caution that because, if it's fine if people reach out to you, but the concern would be all of a sudden if there's conversations happening and everything should be happening in open meeting, and I don't want board and committee members as volunteers to get inundated with emails unless you're willing to. That's where this would be, any question or the correspondence can be at this say finance at Hadley, we'll call it. And then it can live with if the chair changes. Yeah, I'll look into it again. And there's a cost to it. And I guess that there had been this set up a while ago and they weren't used a lot. The emails weren't. And so the town eliminated them for as cost savings. So I don't. I can
When
ask-
I first started,
You
you did,
had one.
I had one at one point, but we weren't using them, just like you said, but we're not looking to do 5 of them. We're
Do you
looking
think-
just to do the one.
Yeah, is that not, I know you're not using it, but do you think it's an active email? We should check and make sure if there is one.
I
for
know.
Amy.
I
Yeah.
thought I did.
I mean, nobody else here, it would be only me
Yeah,
because it's.
yeah.
But there was one at one point.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I've tried to email to it and it just kicks back at me, so I'm not sure it's working.
Okay, all right.
But double check.
I think they get cleansed every now and then.
Yeah.
So the budget information is under the administrator department in Hadley. So when you go to
Oh, thank you.
the department's administrator, I was looking under select board, which is why I just couldn't find it. But under administrator budget information, at the top of the list now is FY 27 override budget as approved. And that would be this handout with the new column
Okay,
labeled new, all in yellow,
Right.
so they know what the new changes.
and you might have said it and I missed it. When is the new website coming?
I'm not sure when exactly.
Oh.
It's there's been trainings and it's a lot to move information. I mean, it'd be in the next, few months, but
Oh, a few months,
yeah, I mean,
within the quarter.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Great, because I know that we need to just update.
Yeah.
I know we have all this information
I
and
know.
we're not touching the website because it's just a waste, understanding, so I'm
Yeah.
just waiting patiently.
No, agreed. Yeah, yeah, and even for instance, some of it would be, where does the budget information live? And so
Yeah.
what's great about the website is it can all be cross-referenced. So, some of it's under the select board, some of it's under finance committee, some of it's under town administrator. To me, it can all be the same and just, cross-reference and link that way. So, and that can be discussed, like, okay, how do we share the information? Because I don't want somebody to have to go to 3 different places
Right,
to find it if they don't have to.
Right.
Sure.
If there could be a link in the first one, they're all going to the same link,
Yep.
that would be great, because I probably should have it in mine.
Yeah, right. So there's probably a few
Right.
different places we can
Yeah.
cross-reference and yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
did you is there anything besides on these sheets, Linda, that you wanted to
That I
point
wanna
out this? I mean,
Um,
like,
not particularly, it's just a reminder that we had a budget, we had a budget ready to go without the overrides, and the
Yeah.
overrides is a tremendous help, but, and I wanted to respond to some of the, what Peter was saying about, people asking about how are we now that your budget has grown again, how are you going to move into the next year? We were ready to go and make additional cuts and streamlining. The process of streamlining, and as Nate has mentioned, a shared positions, perhaps with other towns, shared within town hall, outsourcing various things.
Mhm.
That process that we've been looking at and building up to this year's budget is going to continue.
Okay,
And so,
okay, that's good.
yeah, it's a continue because there certainly were some areas that Brooke came to our attention. And I think if that process continues, hopefully we're going to see a good return on this year's budget from that trimming that we could then use into 28. If FY 28 already. So there are certain things, of course, that we can't control, such as the health insurance, and some of these other ones that got out of control. But we'll do what we can, and I think we continue to look for efficiencies. There's certainly an awareness that we are now not good to go in the sense of, okay, expand that budget now, and then next year everyone gets raises. It's not covered by Prop 2.5, because the raises will continue and the growth will continue. Hopefully we will be able to address the more efficiencies in this year's budget. And we'll be good to go for the next year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way I look at the override, just going back to it is, I was thinking of it as that the town had a whole budget, right? If it's like a slice, if it's a pizza, and without the override, you're missing a few slices. So it's not, with the override, you're back to a whole pizza. It's not like you're now a pizza and a half, right? So it's like there was the budget. It's not, it's not inflated. So I guess when you asked your question, I was thinking, some people might be like, oh, well, the town's growing, but really it's to get back to, say, service levels that were really, a year or two ago. So it's not as if we're, oh, wow, we're going to have like 5 people in this department when historically there's only been 2. It's really just to get back to that 2. And so the override to me isn't, you could say, oh yeah, we're the idea we'll hire more firefighters and different staff, but at one point there was that amount of staff. So it's not as if things are ballooning out of control. It's really just trying to get everything to work the way, what we think is a good structure to have those positions. So.
Right. And when I talk about efficiencies, it's not necessarily to cut back the staff that we have. It will be as we need more staff or as we grow in lieu of additional staff, is there some efficiencies that we could do to stave that off a little bit longer? So.
I know you guys you got the template for our meetings here, right? You guys posted
The agenda,
yeah. Can you add like committee liaisons discussions on that? Because like I'm on the fire committee. Next week we have a meeting and I'm sure with the hiring of all the new firefighters and everything, there's going to be just in case we all go to any of us go to any of the meetings.
Yours, Amy, isn't it? You have a template.
Yeah. Well, I kind of, I started it, the template, and then I sent it to, Uni and he added to it. Is that what will work? I mean, is that?
Yeah. So we were even saying like, just, logistics, like how do how do we get the agenda posted? Just so it's not, especially with volunteers on boards and committees. I think, I would say, how can staff help more, right? So, yeah, I think if it worked, like, again, let's talk about it. What's a good way to do it? So I think, we can help build out the agenda. So if there's ideas you want to add to it, through Amy, you can do it, send it to staff, and then we can say, okay, here's where it is, and then it can get ready to, we can then try to get it posted. So, we don't want to have someone who's working or doing other things be like, like you said, like when do you have time if you're busy during the day and you have to do it after hours, especially with the 48-hour requirement. We want to make sure that that's not to me, I don't want that to be a stressor for you or any board and committee. To me, I'd rather.
The other thing is, and this is how it's been it happened in the past, and it's great if you want to just continue it. When we do joint meetings, since you're listing the agenda on what's on the joint meeting, it's Jennifer did them both.
Right.
When she posted it.
For the by board.
Yeah, it was. So you just changed the topic or.
Yeah.
Because then because she has listed all the Zoom meeting, all that kind of stuff. So instead of me doing it over, she already has it there.
Yeah.
So it's, if we can just keep that going.
Yeah. I mean, I thought the process was fine this time. I'm gonna, again, if we need to improve it, I'm open to that because I don't, want to make it easy for you and
I know there's a lot of things going down the pipe after the override. I know with what's going on in the town, there's been talk about the fire truck, this 100-footer. When's this going to be showing up? If it is, when's for the cost of what's it gonna be for the taxpayers of this. I know that the school is gonna be doing their locker room. They're in the process of that. I know the town voted for $2 million to having both done, but I heard it's only the women's locker, and how much is that really gonna cost us? Excuse me, just kind of knowing of what's going on internally, what's happening in town, what we, current projects, what we're kind of be expected
The roof on
to
the.
know. Yeah, the library, is this gonna be brought up again as to at least questions about, what's happening with it? Cause people are afraid that we're gonna have to flip the bill for putting on a new roof because of, whatever happened.
Right.
And what result of it. I mean, I'm kind of one of those, I want to have answers before I put down a dollar what I have to pay for. At least reasonings, who was at fault for this? Something happened. So I think it's owed to the taxpayers of why and what happened.
Yeah, can I explain the financing on we voted in the school lockers and the ladder truck
Mhm.
in the same meeting. And what I had presented for the financing plan then is still holding, that the school locker rooms was going to get going sooner, and we were probably 3 years out from the truck. So we took the total cost and did it over, I don't know. I don't know whether, I can't recall, I think it was over 5 or 6 years, six years. We increased the taxes to start paying for the locker rooms, and that's dropping off this year, and the fire truck will begin to be paid. So there will not be any increase. The increase happened once, and there won't be any additional increase until those two projects are paid off, and then they will drop off.
Okay.
So getting the truck in, I think it's delayed about a year longer than we had originally
I think
thought.
at the select board meeting, he said it was gonna be, 28. he said, I think.
Yeah.
But I think
So-
that could segue into the next agenda topic was trainings and resources. And so when we met, we said, okay, what do we think is beneficial for not just the finance committee, but also select board and the public to hear? And so, Amy had ideas, Pam, and we did. And so some of it would be, just again, kind of like I printed something from the Mass Municipal Association, the role of the finance committee, but what are the major parts of the budget? It's just, they say the budget cycle, right? Just what you're talking about, capital, like debt planning and capital planning, free cash, reserve accounts. And so, all those things we'd like to, in the next few months, at these meetings, and have one meeting specifically where there's a presentation so the public can see it, but that we describe some of these things, because it all goes into the budget planning process. So, for instance, it is good for a community to have debt, right? It actually look favorably to have a certain percent of your budget, be carried as debt. It's helped with bond rating. It gets you actually better interest rates. And so what Linda was describing is, you manage your debt so that, you don't increase it erratically, but you can try to maintain it every year. So as things drop off after year 10 or 20, after you pay it off, then you can borrow again and you maintain the same debt service proportionally to the budget or what you want, and it's always say whatever percent that could be. And that's actually, that's good planning.
Mhm.
Someone would say, well, why do you always want to have debt? It's like, it's not like running a balance on your credit card where you're paying more for it, right? But it is something that is important that the town can do. And so, those kinds of things would be really great, explaining why free cash is important. It can cover unexpected things, but it's also, it's a buffer. It's also good to have free cash again from an audit standpoint to say, if you spend down your reserves every year, then it's actually not good financial management practices. And so to have a certain percent be free cash every year helps the town in other ways in terms of, say, borrowing rates and audit reviews. So, those kinds of topics in the budget, I think, are really important. And so as I was starting, I asked Linda, I'm like, okay, what is the long range and short range debt in the budget? And she's like, oh, well, there's a supplement to it that shows all the projects. But again, it's, I think, right, we can walk. I think to me, it'd be like, how can we show that more often and explain it? So yeah, here are the 7 long-term debt things the town is paying for, and these were debt exclusions, which, we voted on, and then, we're paying more taxes for those things, and when they're off, but these are part of our normal debt borrowing, and here's our short-term debt. And so, those are the kinds of things I think would be really important, help myself out, but also the public in the next few months before the next budget cycle to review.
Mhm.
And so if there's other things that, you want to hear, from us and from Linda, let us know. And so, like Amy had some great ideas too, and so I have the notes, and so we want to build a presentation for that.
I think, we just started to mention, some of that in capital.
Right.
Have a whole meeting just on capital and long-term capital.
Yeah.
So I watched part of the select board and, Mike Spanknebel had a great presentation, I thought, where he had his assets.
Right.
Where he listed what the vehicles were
Right.
that he had, what does he have them? It'd be great years, make, model, what it's used for,
Right.
maybe how often it's used, when it needs to be replaced.
Yeah.
You know, because what's the year,
Right.
what's the replacement year that we can anticipate that? So, you know, it'd be great to have like a list of all that. This is fire, this is police,
Yeah.
this is DPW. And this is how, you know,
A replacement schedule,
yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
the budget.
you actually don't want to see it, because that's what we just did with the water.
Right.
So in the last year or two, they did the sewer last year, water this year, and they're big ticket items.
Hmm.
So it's like between water and sewer in the next 10 years, they're gonna say we need, $30 million or whatever, if some big number is, but we did OPEB too at the select
Mhm.
board. And so, right, all those things, it's good to see. I will say, my idea, what I'd want to say is like, they're really big numbers, and so you don't want to be overwhelmed. And so when I was at the asset water management meeting, it's like, okay, wow. What are we saying here? But we said to the consultant, don't take anything off. Right? I'd actually rather have everyone, see the top 20 things. And then maybe we can't get there. Maybe the town can only do 12 of those 20, but at least we see it. So we can start trying to plan for it. Like, okay, we have a 120-year-old water line here. That's a priority. Okay, we have this pump that really needs to be fixed. All right, whatever it may be, and we can see it. And so I know we have that for some public infrastructure. I'm assuming fire and police have something similar, even if it's just a spreadsheet, but I agree, it'd be really great
it
to.
would be great to see it once, and review it once a year and just say, okay, this is where we are and just to
Yeah.
keep,
Are we on track? Are we?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the school,
Maybe with that meeting, we
Yeah.
could get the capital planning, like a joint
maybe a
meeting
joint,
with capital
that would
planning
be, that would
too.
make sense.
So actually, I was gonna bring up maybe Nate, you and I, and Linda, have a meeting sometime too to get together about that,
That'd be great.
right?
I'm sorry.
The school
Yeah.
also, they had their long-term plan. I think I've seen it, but things probably, this was years ago. And things have been updated and changed.
Right.
And I would like to have them present that again or see what the new plan, what do they have updated?
Yeah, they have,
He's got that somewhere.
Oh, should they do? They have a whole spreadsheet on it. I've
He's real
seen
good
it.
with that kind of stuff.
I think the school committee this month is actually just voting on that in the budget,
At the
so.
meeting right now, well, they were.
Yeah, see, they are being, so they're actually voting on their new or updated capital plan and some
Great.
other things, so I can, I'll make a note to try to email that out
Great.
and get that, yeah.
So I can understand about the locker rooms.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, so as to how much, I know it was $2 million, so I can understand how this all works on what you do, because I have no idea what you really do and how when it comes to the raising of our, other than giving out,
You're not the only one.
great things like this, to knowing of saying, okay, someone like me is going, okay, if it costs $2 million, how did it come out of, if the taxes didn't get raised, or where did it come from to help pay for this? These, it seems not a simple item, but knowing we didn't do an override for it, it's going to be a debt exclusion, of course. So by that, it's like, okay, how much when would it get paid off by this debt exclusion for the taxpayers to know? Because I don't know, and people ask me, I'm just really, how does it work, in a way, how does it work for us to know it's a debt exclusion?
In
It's not
layman's
gonna,
terms, please.
yeah, in layman's terms.
All right, so we raise enough above the tax rate to cover a certain amount that we want to pay off each year. So I believe it is, I think I said $250,000 in principal plus the interest. So, or maybe it's like 275, including the interest. I can bring that next time. I actually been working on the debt schedule. So I'd be happy to share that. So then we increase the taxes to raise raise enough each year to pay $275,000 towards this obligation. And I think it was 3.6 million between the two of them. And so we have started, I borrow that much each year. I have not borrowed $3 million. I borrow $275,000 a year and we pay it off. And that is money collected that is paying for those projects.
So is that the 3 million or plus, is that because of the interest? Because the town voted on $2 million.
But in the locker rooms,
No, it was voted on both the boys and girls locker rooms. It'd be $2 million for both of them. No, it was voted for, or whatever it is.
Truck was
but-
two.
I thought it was $2 million and that it would be for both of them.
Well, I
being
think
done.
somebody did a donation or something towards the lockers as well, so I don't think they borrowed as much.
The ladder truck was $2 million.
But I thought it was of having both locker rooms done for $2 million. So now
Well,
it's,
and the actual spending of the money is not what I mean, the projects that they're doing, that you'd have to ask that
But I think
school.
but you know what I mean? It's like if it's,
Yeah.
if it's voted, should that go to another town vote that if it's over the budget of, if it's gonna be $2 million for both locker rooms and they're only doing one and one's, total's gonna be over
Yeah.
3, should that go to another revote
Now,
for
when
that?
the town voted as a dollar amount, that's it.
Right.
If they're only getting half the project for that dollar amount, we're not committed. The town's not committed to doing the rest of the project.
That's
would
gonna be on
definitely-
the school.
It would definitely have
Okay,
to
that's
go-
what I was wondering,
Okay.
because you're saying 3 million. I'm like, wait a minute, we voted for 2.
Was with the fire
Yeah.
truck.
I'm talking about the two of those together.
Okay, 2 of those,
The
okay,
two and the one something. It was
Okay.
not, so,
okay.
that's the amount.
I want to
Got
say
it.
that the locker rooms got misquoted, Peter,
Hmm.
and that's why they're spending so much on just the girls. I heard that somewhere, but
I think they were concerned about a lot of the costs in the budget and in the plan that you're talking about. That
Mhm.
many of those quotes, and I don't know that they have a company or someone help put that together for them, that a lot of it was a lower cost. I mean, it was costing higher than
Yeah.
what was in there, so
So
they
they
were
have
having to
one.
go through, and probably if they have an updated capital plan, that's the main thing you're going to see is the updated costs, which I think they were low at the time. I know too that there were a lot of plans then to do a lot of their capital out of school choice funding, but since then the school has had to go into the school choice funding more for the operational budget than was planned at the time, which I'm going to say is like 3 or 4 years ago when they were doing that, when they had that one together. I think it was then.
And they've had some
So-
big equipment that had to get replaced this year that
Yeah.
they used the
Well, that's
school choice for, yeah.
this is all good plans, right? We make plans. So we can change them each year, I guess.
When it comes
But
to
we
a
try.
contractor doing any type of a job or construction, they see the job, and I know there's some things that are unforeseeable. So, you set a contract and say it's gonna cost $1.6 million, that's prevailing wage, and, they've inflated their cost by 30%. And then all of a sudden they come back and say, oh, no, it's gonna cost 2. Does the town say, no, you said it was gonna be 1.6, or is there a negotiation between, you and the select board talking to these people and say, understandable, there's unforeseeable things, but this thing's cost so much, and I know inflation, what they're gonna be calling, are we holding those contracts within the lines of what we agreed upon? Or is there kind of a little bit of an agreement to say, we'll meet you in a halfway?
For the larger contracts, like the buildings, they have a percentage built in there for just that.
Mhm.
And that's what a responsible contractor will do. They're saying that however $1 million this is going to cost, then we're going to add a percentage. We're going to ask the town for that plus a certain percentage more. Let's say a $3 million project, and they're going to put it in, I don't know, let's say 10% more. So we do another 300,000.
Mhm.
I hope that's right.
Yep.
And so then they asked the town to vote for the 3.3 million. And we're not going to necessarily spend, if it comes in at 3 million, we never borrow or spend that extra $300,000. That's, we go to town meeting and say, I'm going to now change that, we're going to return that to the town, or we're going to decrease the borrowing, we go actually to town meeting and have the number dropped. Now, for lower projects, I don't know if they do that, and it sounds, so I don't know if you've put in for a truck and you've put in the wrong, you're gonna say we're 90,000 for the truck, and the truck really costs $100,000. It depends on, did where was the mistake? I don't know, but I don't think, if a truck costs 100,000, the town has voted 90. I don't think there's anything we can do to the company to make them give us a truck for $90,000.
Right.
Or like we're gonna find where the extra 10,000 can come from. And we have done that.
Mhm.
We have done that. A department head will come in and say, oops, I need an extra 4,000 for this, or I only got this much at town meeting. Well, let's find that in your budget, or we'll go to finance committee and see if they will come in. I think finance committee has asked for been asked for the overage at times. So,
Yeah, but typically on that kind of project, state limits it to 20% of your contract for change
Yeah,
order.
20%.
So, if someone put together bid specs and we had cost estimators, right? And the town said, okay, the school said, okay, this is a $1.5 million project. That's the estimated cost. The contractor comes in at 1.3, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can make some money. I'm gonna keep change ordering. There's a limit to it. And then hopefully you'd have a good project manager or something else, and you say, no, these aren't actually, these aren't valid change orders. And they might say, they could say, no, well, the town actually voted 2 million, so I'm gonna try to try to cheat up, but there's things in place to prevent that. And so some of it becomes like the project management piece, how good were the specifications and your cost estimates. So there are unforeseen things that could be changed, right? But hopefully in this instance, if it was, say, the locker room, someone had gone in and done, hopefully the engineers right, met all the code requirements, like building and accessibility codes, fire, whatever it may be, costed materials correctly and all those things so that it's an accurate estimate. So when it comes time to construction, maybe the change orders are like, oh, actually, we want to move an outlet. Some of the stuff just isn't quite right, but we already had electrical in there. So it's not like they forgot the whole big piece and it's a small change order, right? The issue is when there's increasing a number of change orders, and typically you want to make sure you have a contract in place that can control that, but it really becomes the contract and project management piece.
Do we have somebody overseeing this project at the school right now, or is this just being,
it's,
do we have an OPM? Is this part of the school committee? They have somebody? Because,
Right.
I don't know if you're seeing this or because I know they're in their own little
they
thing
handle
that they have, I know they handle themselves, but actually, we want to make sure they have somebody that's overlooking and benefit for the town or for the schools, should I say?
Yeah, no, I can ask Chris and Dr. McKenzie about that, but I think it is required to get certain funding. You have to have it.
For so much money, correct?
It is, but
I don't know.
you can also do you can always go above and beyond that, or you can do other things as a municipality. Like or the schools could say, okay, we're going to have all of our representation, and Chris as a finance person is also going to be really involved.
But if the finance person doesn't know how things actually work, then that's not the right person to have there.
Right, but I'm just saying that
He's just a numbers guy.
right. But you're
Yeah, being honest.
Yeah, but you're gonna
numbers
assign
guy's just a numbers guy.
you can assign a team to do that. So you
Okay.
have someone who's doing the engineering, construction, and they all work together. So you also need the numbers person. But yeah, I'll follow up and see how that I mean, you don't want the cost to overrun so much.
Well, not just making sure that it's done properly. Look what happened to the library. That person left or was gone, and look what happened to it.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure. We had, soccer fields that was done, and they had to be done twice, and they still don't leach right.
Right.
So we want to make sure the right people for the right job are overseeing the projects.
And many times I put on, because we keep getting asked about the library, but it seems like it's been a year. I'm not sure where we stand now. It's been a long time, but we just keep saying it's with the attorneys. If we could get an update, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I can. It's on my list.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
That's what I've heard too.
So when, I don't know when you want it, I guess I'll,
But I think so for the trainings, I just want to say, I think we can do the capital and,
okay,
we can do the town stuff and just generally what would be important to understand for the budget. Like, what are the parts of a municipal budget? We
Okay.
talked about it, all those pieces, whether it's like the, debt, free cash, capital, operations, and just kind of go through it and how, here's kind of the best practices, here's how it works in Hadley, here's how the budget works, because there's a whole debt section, right? And it's really important to understand that, how does the capital planning work? How do the schools work? The schools come in with one number, but they do have their own budget process. So understanding, that comes into the revenue side, like what are towns' revenues in terms of state aid, local receipts, school funding. So I think we can try to cover all those pieces. What I will say is the Mass Municipal Association has, and the Department of Revenue has like little videos and other resources, a really big committee handbook, which we're going to try to get a digital copy to you. But, I'd like to start sending, more links or other things for you, and let us know if they find them helpful. So, there are like 5-minute videos on, here's what capital, debt service or debt exclusion vote is, here's what this is. And so, and unfortunately, it's not all in one place. And so, we could try to consolidate it and say, okay, here's, whether we get a resource document or page up with links, we can email that to you, but have things that are ready for finance committee members. So, to me, it's also, it's not just for you now, it's also the legacy of like, okay, 2 years from now, there's a new finance committee member. What are the resources a finance committee member needs to have to be, a good member? So not that we have to, I don't want to go looking through emails, but it'd be nice to have a document of all those. So yeah, I think if some, I think I have some ideas I'd like to, and web pages may change, but the state puts out a really good handbook. It's long, but I think it's really good and we can work through it. I think a few different state departments put out some really good information. And then between Linda and myself, we can put out good information. So
Amy,
Yeah.
do you have the handbook? I don't know.
It's so old. I
Okay.
have a real
Yeah.
old one.
Yeah, there was one, 2012 was the last one I had, but I know there's a more recent one than that. So there is
I think Mark
finance
Packy
thing-
gave me the last one. It
okay.
was a long time ago.
So
Yeah.
the Association of Town Finance Committee,
10 years.
they put out a handbook, and it's a really good, very comprehensive handbook. And everyone's entitled to one for free as members because we do pay AFTC dues, and so you're entitled to one. I did write today that if you go onto the website, now I will send this to you in an email. But if you go onto their website and it says this is how you can get your book and contact this person, and I thought, okay, I'm going to I wrote to her myself this afternoon
Okay.
and said, can you just give me the link? I assume that you have it on electronically. Can you send me the link? We have a lot of new members and we want to get them up to speed as quickly as possible. Can you just send them to me? Because it is free there. It's a $45 handbook. So, and I do know one person who did, select board member who actually bought it because they're not entitled to them for free, but you all are, so you should have one. They have hard copies if you want them, but I think to have it online is to be able to access it electronically is also really useful, because that way you can do a search. You can do search for stabilization fund. You can do a search for tax rate or tax recap sheets, cherry sheets. You can do a search if you want to zero right in on various things you're concerned about at that time. But to start with, I think that I'm going to see if I can get this. If it turns out that each one of you has to go and access it yourself, I'll send an email with the steps to follow so that you can either receive it as a link and then print it out yourself, or just hold it by PDF, or if you want to have a book sent to you if you still have that. But
Thank you.
Nick and I we were flipping didn't I call that one? I said everyone except Peter. Yeah, I told you.
Talking behind my back already.
So we'll see what they give. Oh, so we had it online. We were flipping through it this afternoon. Everything's in there, and I think I forgot over time, because I used to rely on that very heavily, that old version. And I don't think all that much has changed, but they have actually done an update with it. A lot of the things are still the same. So I thought that would be a really good place to start. That'd be kind of like your book, and then we could still talk about it and review and say that they'll have a whole section on what local receipts are, or what the local aid, how local aid is done. But then we can have we can talk about revenues, and if you have looked at that section, we'll have a better discussion. Because I think, that would, it's really good information, even if you don't memorize it all, that you don't have to then wonder, how do you just make these numbers up? You just make up the revenue, which Peter Ash had a meeting once. No,
Okay.
so if you do your homework and you read your book and come to class, I think that we'll have a lot better base of understanding as we get into the budget next year, and hopefully be on the same page, not necessarily agreeing, but we'll have the same base of understanding of what's, of where we're all coming from.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I don't, have anything to add?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, I'm good.
So I think we've gone through quite a bit. For the next meeting, let's look at, because I think that's when we need to do the cash transfers.
The buy board's the 15th I have on my calendar. Is that still correct? Do we
The
know?
15th is the last day to do it. It's a regular select board meeting. They also meet, they meet on,
First,
the 1st. Which the numbers may not be ready. The accountants seem to think they would be. So Linda, I have to check with her. The 15th could work. I just, that is the last day, and I don't know if I want to wait till the very last day at, 7 in the evening or whatever time it is to do it. So I don't, if there's another time, this could just be a quick board meeting. And just for that specific, for the year-end stuff, if it needs to be, it doesn't seem like the meeting schedules are aligning to have it work that way. Usually we'd want the accountant to have,
Yeah.
I would say, like a week or something after a year-end, just to tie out everything and not,
Yeah,
I don't,
sense.
yeah. But yeah, I don't know but I'm gone the week of whatever. I can always attend remotely, the
Which
week of, the 4th, whatever week that is, like.
Jennifer can do
Which is
it.
on a Saturday, or
Yeah.
maybe the week before, or the week
The
after.
week after, yeah, that like the 5th through the 9th or whatever, I'm out of town. Yeah, Jennifer
I can
could
do
come in
any
and
day-
do.
Jennifer
I
can do
any
it.
day but the 6th, because I'll be flying back to Michigan with my granddaughter.
Well, you gotta get the whole select board there. They need to,
They do
Yeah.
too, but if there was a a day that worked really well for everyone for that, say that second week in July or something, then maybe we could, I can work with the select board. So if there was like that week of the 6th through the 10th.
Yeah, I'm good any day but the 6th, though. I know everybody else is available.
I'm open.
guess we'll have to get back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, all right, yeah.
Yeah, not the 10th, but
even though you're on
that's the day
vacation.
they don't usually like.
So either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
That's your week off.
Yeah, that's all right.
What week are we talking about? The week of
The
what?
week of the 7th, 8th, or 9th.
Yeah.
Any of those days work for all of us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right,
Yeah,
so
so I think that's when, I would feel more comfortable. It'd be odd to do it on the 1st, knowing that we might have to then do it again if the numbers change. Yeah,
okay, so if we're looking to do a buy board meeting now,
Exactly.
I do want to have a meeting with us, just our group. Do you want to do it afterwards, the buy board meeting, and try to do everything that week? Or should we just say, okay, maybe the last week of July, we will have another meeting, just us?
At least probably after the buy board, because
We'll already be here.
Right
I
afterwards?
would think after.
It
It doesn't have
shouldn't
to
be very
right
long,
after,
it's
but-
just doing the transfer, right?
Or are you gonna combine it with a regular buy board meeting? The other thing is, they don't have to be at a buy board to sign them. They could do it at a finance committee and a select board. They could do it separately.
it could, but. Either way, the select board does, we have to figure out, what select board meeting would it be? If it's the 15th, we could just do the 15th. I just feel like it's just, I don't know, I feel like it's pushing it a little bit.
15th, I won't be here.
No.
Try for the 8th then,
Yeah,
see if they're able to do that.
right,
We
maybe
could do the
8th,
8th or the 9th,
Yeah.
7th, 8th, or 9th, yeah.
You said 8th or 9th?
8th or 9th.
Yeah, 8th or 9th, so, okay.
Kids got basketball 7th and the 10th.
So July 8 or 9.
8 or
In
9.
between football?
Well, yeah, then we'll
Okay.
basketball now, football too.
I guess what we'll do is, a. We'll do a by-board meeting for the year-end transfers. And then that's extra, and then the select board can just, they don't need that, they're only gonna be that would be an extra meeting for them.
It would, yeah.
So they may just,
So
we
then
can
they might,
dismiss them and we
they,
can
they
keep
might
going.
just say enough, and they might say, and then we can continue and just go through. I wanna look at doing a restructure finance, and since it's a start of a new year. And I actually think that by board meeting, maybe when we're talking about the, year end, it would be good to have Sue or, and the assessor come to that. I think it's good for them to see it too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they're gonna do maybe some presentation or show us exactly what we wanna tell the public.
Yeah, I know both Sue and Cheryl are really busy for year end. So as long as they know and they can, have something ready for the 8th, whether it's, just like a handout or they get their notes ready.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see if the select board is available on either of those evenings.
okay.
Yeah,
And as soon as we hear from you, then we'll put together the agenda for us for after, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then we'll have to go into, I don't know, well, right afterwards, just to select another meeting. Maybe we can put something in the books for going down to talk about capital. Like we just talked about.
yeah, and my.
Is at the by board, we might not. Well, we'll be meeting after. We can set the next meeting after.
Yeah, I mean, when Lynn and I spoke about the training, the idea would be either in August or early September to have a meeting here where we could go over, parts of that handbook and say, okay, here's kind of the general budget process, and here are the items we'd want to look at, and go over them, have that be ready as a presentation for, sometime, say in September. But, in the next few months lead up to it, know what we need to go over. And I agree with Linda. I think to me it would be, so let's have it for this next budget cycle so that, it's also for the public, right? Everyone's comfortable with what we're talking about. If there are questions about a certain part of the budget, let us know. Let the public can hear it, and so we can all, can explain it. So, yeah, I think if people don't, I feel like if you aren't in the weeds and you aren't reading that 174 page handbook, you're not following along. And so, yeah, I think that was apparent with the budget discussions and with the override, there were a lot of questions, right? So what's happening? People thought we were adding money to the budget. They weren't sure, right? When does the money come in? And, is it twice as much? And, how does the levy work for 2.5%? So is this, going over, what is all those questions are things that, right, most people don't need to know. But when they want to know, it's hard to find the information. And so to me, it'd be like, okay, how can we make it more accessible and available? Because you don't want people confused and then getting upset. And so, so I'd say, publicly, like they can always contact staff. I mean, I want to say we're always available. And so I might not have the answer, right? But I'd try to find it, right? And figure out who can. So I think that's really important.
That's a start. So we good?
We're good. I do want to add, just for tonight's minutes, I want to add that Harry Vandalowski is in attendance. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I second that.
Okay, motion by Peter, second by Pam, all in favor?
Aye.